Hi, I'm Tammy Lehman from Tarrant County. Thank you for inviting me down here to visit with you about poll watching. I got started in this fight, or this interest, when I woke up the next morning following the election night of 2020, when Donald Trump was behind. And I knew that that just didn't set well with me. Also, coming from Tarrant County, the largest conservative county in the whole country, Joe Biden won our county by a sliver of a margin. I just didn't believe it, so I set out, my husband and I, trying to make sense of where our world was taking us. And through that path, I became a precinct chair in Tarrant County. I volunteered to work elections. I was a clerk. I was an alternate judge. I became a judge. And then I started getting information about how to reconcile or review elections, where I used some of the things I picked up in my career as a CPA, a certified fraud examiner and consultant. And I love details, so it didn't bother me to dig into the details. So this is how I ended up in poll watching as well. I found out that poll watchers are so necessary so that we can have free and fair elections. And they're underutilized. As a matter of fact, in Tarrant County, we trained and equipped about 70 poll watchers, just our small group, for November of 24's general election. And on the first day of early voting, they were showing up, and these lead clerks did not know what to do with them. So that told me that there needed to be more education as far as poll watchers. So I'm so glad that you're interested in this. To become a poll watcher, you need to complete the Secretary of State's online course. Yay, we have a new participant here that
And he's already done the course.
has been admitted because he's got his certificate of completion. But there's a course online that teaches you about poll watching and the laws covering it. I'm going to teach you the practical aspects. You do the online course, but I'm going to answer all your other questions about, well, how do you put that into play? So this is what we're going to cover over this next hour or so. What are the qualifications to be a poll watcher? How do you prepare to poll watch? Oh, here's a good one. How do I get in there? How do I convince the judge that I should be there and they'll let me in? When I'm there, what are my duties? What am I going to do? What am I going to watch for? Okay, I'm at the polling location and I'm done. How do I get out? How do I escape? Also, since I've gone to all of this to become educated, I want to commit myself to being available in whichever county that I'm at. Ways to plug in for information, and how can I let others know about this. Now, what I'm going to show you is the training that we're using in Tarrant County to equip other poll watchers. We now have a new subcommittee as part of Tarrant County GOP's on poll watching, and I'm the chair of this subcommittee. So I'm going to give you what we're teaching up there with some minor modifications. Okay, to be qualified as a poll watcher, you need to be a registered voter of the territory that is covered by the election.
So for application here in Hill County, in Whitney, we have a mayor and city council election, and then we have a school district election. It's a joint election, so they're all on the same ballot. So if I'm a city council candidate, I can only appoint people who live in the city limits, even though the joint election covers the school district, right?
I believe that's the case.
Right.
We've got that question posed in Tarrant County because we do have some people. I mean, we have some issues that you wouldn't have.
Right.
But we still have some areas in our county, this upcoming election, that there's nobody on the ballot. I don't have to go vote because I'm in an area where there's just nobody running. There's nothing coming up. Well, would I be qualified to be a poll watcher if that's the case?
Right.
I'm a registered voter in my county, but if I can't vote, can I be a poll watcher? So we're finding out that answer, but I believe that's the case. So you can't be a candidate for public office in that same election. You cannot hold a public office and be a poll watcher. You cannot be an employee of any of the election workers at the polling location that you're poll watching. You can go pick another polling location if you are an employee of somebody. You can't be convicted of an election-related offense. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I've been studying the Texas Election Code. You can do some things, and we'll talk about that. And there's no fine. There's no penalty. They're looking at that and changing some of those in Austin right now. You can't be related to somebody in the second consanguinity. I think that's how you say. You can't be related to them, to an election worker, if they're your spouse, sibling, grandparents, or grandkids, that close of a relationship. And you can be related to the candidate that you're poll watching for. You can be a child of the candidate.
Or spouse of.
Or spouse of, yes. So here's how you prepare yourself ahead of going to poll watch. First of all, you need to complete the Secretary of State Poll Watcher's free online course. After you pass that test, you can print out your certificate. And the expiration date right now is August 31st of 25. Now, if you were a poll watcher in November, that certificate said that it was going to expire at the end of the year. Well, if you go log into the portal back into your account for the poll watchers class, you'll see that they updated your expiration date. So you don't have to take that course again for this election.
Just print out another certificate.
Just print out another one, and the expiration date will have changed. We are in a larger county. We might have to drive, verify that I'm supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time, possibly use my GPS to get there, because we have this thing in Tarrant County, it's called traffic. It shows up certain times of the day, and it takes longer. So I'm to be there on time, whatever my appointed time is. So just have that plan. Keep multiple copies of that completion certificate, and you'll need an appointment form from a candidate. It's called the Certificate of Appointment of a Poll Watcher by a Candidate, long name. And some of our locations in Tarrant County, they're quite small. A lot of people going in and out. They may not have an extra chair, so we're suggesting keep a folding chair in the vehicle. I tend to just walk around. I don't sit when I'm there because I'm looking at stuff and I'm going around listening to stuff. Okay, also being prepared, have pens and pencils. I like to use a steno notebook, and I kind of like the ones that have the pockets, so I can keep my certificates in there and appointment forms. In Tarrant County, we are giving out forms for to collect numbers off of the machines, and we'll cover that later. Bring those with you. Well, if you can't see, you need glasses. If you can't see, you can't get numbers or see some of the other things. A bottle of water. Somebody suggested binoculars, and she takes binoculars with her. For example, if there's some kind of issue and you want to get the tag number of somebody leaving, or if you want to see the electioneering that's going on, because that's an election-related activity, you can have your binoculars to see that. Your cell phone and your phone charger, keep the charger in the vehicle. Why would that be? Why wouldn't you take your phone charger in?
Because you're not supposed to have your phone on.
Exactly. Exactly. And you certainly don't want to be charging it in there. I've got stories about that where people electioneering would come in and, hey, my phone's dead. Can I plug in? And the judge said, sure. And it was just a few feet from the scanner. Not a good thing. That was not good. Also, in my vehicle, and when I go in, I also take 2 other documents. These are both available by the Secretary of State's website. One of them is the Pollwatcher's Guide, okay? And the other one is Qualifying Voters on Election Day. This one is as of 24, I think it's September of 24. Because one of the things that we're encouraging our poll watchers to do is watch the clerks checking voters. This is really good for that. And this one has the laws, and it's as of August of 23. Any important related, or any important election related phone numbers? I assume, since Amy, that since you're kind of coordinating with the poll watchers, they'll have your phone number, is that right?
Anybody that I talk to will have my phone number, yes.
Okay, okay.
So
We have a hotline. We have a cell phone that we take turns during early voting who's going to answer that hotline. So I think I've got the number, not for you guys to use.
right.
But that way they have one point of contact throughout the entire election. It's just we may have different people answering that hotline. Okay, so who's in charge at a polling location? Early voting, they called in the lead clerk. Do you know why they called in the lead clerk? For extra bonus points here? It's because your election administrator is actually the judge of the election during early voting. And that's whose signature is on those ballots, right? During early voting. Okay, so all of the folks that show up, the number one person at the polling location is going to be the lead clerk. Did you have a question? Okay. On election day, that person is the election judge. Well, for the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to call them presiding judges, PJ, okay? So, how do you get into the polling location? Well, our admissions. For early voting, the law says that you can be present as a poll watcher anytime the polling place is open and until the election equipment is secured at the end of the day. In Tarrant County, I believe that first week, our hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So poll watchers can show up at 8 a.m. Some of them have said, well, I think it would be good if we got in a little sooner, especially that first day when we're looking at the numbers to make sure everything was zeroed out. Well, if you can get in sooner, go ahead and try for that. But the law says when they open, when the polls open during early voting. But on election day, you can show up when the election judge shows up. That might be at 5 a.m. So you can see how they're putting everything together and so on. And you can stay until the election officials have completed their duties at the end of the day. You may serve the hours that you want to. It used to be there was a minimum number of hours. If you were going to poll watch, you had to stay there, I believe it was 5 hours, before you could gain readmittance. Now, you can show up for an hour, say in the morning, and maybe you want to go back and check something later in the afternoon. You can do that. There's no minimum amount of time or minimum amount of times that you can go to a location. So here's the paperwork to get in. You need the Secretary of State's completion certificate, that's required, and also this certificate appointment as a poll watcher. It can be by a party or by a candidate. When we have these nonpartisan elections that's going on now, the only one that we would have available is by a candidate. The parties are not getting involved.
And PACs can't appoint either.
What?
PACs can't appoint unless there's a measure on the ballot.
Correct.
And we don't have a measure.
Yeah, correct. So make multiple copies of these forms because every time you visit the polling location, you're going to leave those two forms with the PJ. Now, some of the PJs that I've come across, if I showed up in the morning and then I went later in the afternoon, I was prepared to give them those 2 forms again. I leave it up to their discretion. Some of them were like, no, we're good, you were here this morning. Or maybe, a week later during early voting, they're like, no, I still have your forms, you're okay. I leave that up to the judge. Okay, so your appointment as a poll watcher, Amy will get that ready for you. Here's my suggestion. I assume that you're going to send it in an email.
Okay.
So you're going to fill out what you need to of the form. And here's a copy of it right here. And I have some handouts to help you. This is what I suggest. If it's in an email, what Amy's going to do, she's going to put in there the name of the poll watcher. She's going to put her name. She's the candidate. The date and the title and the date of the election is the, joint general and special election for May 3rd of 2025. Even if you go out during early voting, it's a May 3rd election, okay? You're going to, either she will or you will print your address and then your state voter identification ID, not your county. I assume you have a county ID number, a registration number? Just the state. Okay, in Tarrant County, we have a state ID and we have a shorter number for the county. We want the state, so we'll print that on there. Amy will sign it. She's going to print her name. Everywhere where you see it's yellow, make sure all of that yellow information is filled out, and then make your copies. Poll watcher, make your copies. And then what is in orange, you will sign or fill out before you enter that polling location, like your signature. Sign that before you go into the polling location. We have 45 early voting locations in Tarrant County and 160 on election day. Some of our poll watchers are going to go to more than one location. So we just have them print the location when they're in the parking lot of the location. We have them write that in when they're there. But this part here, you're going to sign that in front of the judge. You don't have to show the judge an ID. What the judge does, compares your signature up there with the signature here. And then the judge will fill out the rest of it. And the judge will keep it in their paperwork. Also, you will recite an oath in front of the presiding judge. That oath is on the front and on the back of that form. I swear or affirm that I will not disrupt the voting process or harass voters in the discharge of my duties. There's also an affidavit that you're signing to, but I've had a judge one time ask me to recite the affidavit, and I had to say, no, I'll recite this oath. So then the judge should give you a name tag. And a lot of times it just says poll watcher on it. If they don't have any pre-printed ones that say poll watcher, just say, hey, I'll just use one of your other name tags, right? Just put poll watcher. I have also put on there, by law, I cannot talk to a voter, because I get asked a lot when I'm standing there and everybody else is busy and a voter has a question. They come up to somebody that looks like they know what they're doing and has a name tag. So we cannot talk to voters. Okay, well, what if the judge won't let you in? Well, be calm. The law is on our side. It is. What we found in Tarrant County, the PJs didn't know what to do with this. They were apprehensive. Well, I don't know, stand right here. I'm going to go call Tarrant County elections. And we would encourage you to tell the judge if they don't know what to do with you when you announce yourself that you're a poll watcher. Now, if they won't let you in, ask that they give the reason, write the reason on the back of one of those forms why they're not letting you in. remember the law's on your side, if they knowingly or intentionally refuse to allow you to come in and poll watch when you have all your certifications there, that is a Class A misdemeanor. There are some places in the Texas Election Code where there's some bite. A Class A misdemeanor, that's a $4,000 fine, and up to a year in jail. So that it's a serious one. We have a right to be in there to look to see what's going on. Also, if they're not letting you in, do not leave the polling location, but go outside and then call Amy if that should happen to you. And then Amy can get involved, probably with your county administrator, because it's probably, I'm guessing, based on what we saw, lack of knowledge on what a poll watcher is. Any questions here? Okay, so these are your duties. This is why we have poll watchers, what you can do. You are entitled to sit or stand anywhere there's election activity going on. And you can observe, you can listen in, except, and there's a few cases in chapter 33, we'll talk about those, and it makes sense why. We are allowed free movement to just walk around, just see what's going on. So that's why I don't take a chair in, I'm walking around, because there's always something going on, right? You can observe and document the check-in of voters, and that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Observe and document curbside voting. Do you have curbside voting here? Okay, so they wheel out a standalone. Okay, good. You can observe and document whenever an election worker is helping a voter. And you can observe and document dates and times, numbers on all of the machines. You can look at reports, any activity related to the elections. Okay, you see this? This is what you should look like when you go in. You're using these and not that. And if this is the first time that you've ever gone in, people don't know that this is your first time, that you're nervous, you're kind of shaken, okay? So, when you're documenting, got your notebook here, I would encourage you to write down when you got there, what time you left, anything that seems important, noteworthy, and always what time it happened, who said what to whom, just anything. Keep really good detailed notes. We also, as I mentioned, we have, and I'll leave those with you, Amy, to give your poll watchers, numbers that we feel are important to take. And even if there's nothing going on, I would just make a note every 30 minutes so it looks like you're paying attention. That something
8:30 a.m. and all's well.
Yeah. I want to point something out too. Some of the workers and the PJ, they feel like, oh, I'm being watched because I'm here to do something wrong. That's not our job. It's, for some people, seem natural. Yes.
I will reiterate that I tell people, I had someone ask me, well, why is there such a big thing on poll watching? I'm like, I want people to understand that this is okay, that the process is okay. And so, and I've told people about streaming. You know, when I'm streaming a meeting, that protects the elected officials as much as it does the grassroots people that are watchdogging. Because if somebody says, hey, you know, they said this at the meeting and nobody was recording, you don't have anything protecting you. And having an extra pair of eyes is a protection of the process as well as, you know, everything. So
yes, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But yeah.
And I thought, I read in my training that if I did observe something wrong, that I can't intervene. I have to go to the judge, or if the clerk who is assigned responsibility for the site, I report to them, and then they address the problem.
Yes, always when you show up, ask the PJ, is it okay if I speak with any of your election workers if I see something, or do you want me just to come to you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ask the PJ. There are a few cases, and we'll talk about it, where we're not supposed to disrupt, and it's not our job to, oh, you're doing it that wrong, this is how you do, no, that's not our job. But there's a couple of cases where it's like, okay, time out, I need to go get the PJ because we got something going on here that shouldn't be going on. It's only a few cases, so, did I answer your question?
Yes.
But what I would suggest, anybody going into Pollwatch, have a pleasant face. We all can smile. Now, we don't want to look crazy, like a goofy grin, but you know, you can go in there and like, I'm gonna find something. I know you guys are doing something here. I'm gonna find it if it takes me all day. Or we can be pleasant. I think we need to be pleasant, because that's not our job. Our job is, if something's going on that shouldn't be, I look at it as, hey, we're both on the same team here. You obviously don't know the law or the procedure. I do, and I'll just mention that it's my understanding that it's done this way. Okay? It's not a gotcha. We're not after gotcha here, although we might feel like it. When I first get there and I'm all checked in, what I'll do is I'll go stand in a corner and just kind of look at how everything's going, and I draw a diagram where all the machines are, who is working where, and they should be wearing a name tag so I know their names, okay? Because it makes note-taking easier. And if there's some issues about the setup, and we've had some, especially in Tarrant County, especially that have to do with colleges, it seems like they set these up in the commons area where there's kids running through between classes and there's no privacy and it's just a mess. If we have it documented, the layout, that's helpful to show whoever. I identify the machines and I number the duos. That way, if there's a jam in duo number 2, I can say duo number 2 jammed, rather than the one closest to the window. See what I'm saying? It makes note-taking easier. Okay, so this could be an example where you come in and you've got your poll pads. Your poll pads kind of look like this. Okay, so they're sitting over here, and I draw a square, for the table and the number of poll pads, and our poll pads have a number on the back of them so I can see, and I can put those numbers there. People check in here, then they come to the controller, they get their code, and then they go to the duos, and I've numbered the duos here, and then when they're done voting, they go deposit their ballot into the scanner, and they can go out. So this could be representative of a polling location that looks like that.
Ours will be much simpler.
Yours are simpler?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Okay. You don't have as many duos?
no duos.
We might go some days of early voting where nobody votes.
Really?
It's going to be a
They
very
could.
small election,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
But-
this is, yes, you're right.
You
In
can
my-
get elected mayor here with 60 or 65 votes.
Out of how many registered voters?
1,300.
1,400.
Yeah. And it's like those positions, like the school board and the city council, water board, whatever, those can affect our lives more so, but everybody gets all excited about the presidential election.
Right.
Yeah, that's important too, but our grassroots,
Yeah. So just for our local voters, we won't have that much of a setup,
yeah,
but it's all just just watch it, observe it, and then just let
Yes.
people know it's okay.
Yeah.
They got it covered.
okay. So, an affidavit. We only had one case where we had a poll watcher that we asked to prepare an affidavit because we felt like what that poll watcher was documenting was important enough. and an affidavit is where we state facts only, not our opinion. I know that's kind of hard, but leave out all opinion, and if there's more than one of you that happens to be at the location, don't compare notes on whatever it was. You create your own affidavit separate, don't compare notes with anybody else. And sign your affidavit in front of a notary. This makes it a legal document. I forgot to mention, maybe I don't know that this would happen for you guys, maybe it might. If a judge doesn't let you come in, well, I already have 2 others from the same candidate, 2 poll watchers from the same candidate. The law says you can't have more than 2 poll watchers appointed by the same candidate at the same polling location at the same time. And that's why you have somebody that kind of watches over where people are being sent. Now, I think because we had a number in November. November was crazy, but we did have a judge, and she felt the size of her location didn't warrant 7 poll watchers at the same time. So I think she rotated them. She says, even though nobody was going to exceed their 2, she's like, it's a small location. I can't get 7 of you in here at the same time. So they took turns. I get that, but she wasn't refusing. She was just delaying it. Okay. Affidavits are they're uncommon. What I did on this particular one was there were a number of things that she pointed out that the election judge on election day wasn't following protocol. So we got the affidavit. I sent it to the Tarrant County GOP chair. I sent it to the Democrat county chair. I sent it to our county administrator, elections administrator, and left it in their lap. It was like, this is what this judge did, and just making you aware. Hopefully that individual will go through additional training before they're sent out, because they did some things they shouldn't have. Okay, these are the do nots. I know for some of this it's hard. Do not talk to any voter, even if they ask. I know we want to, but that's not our job. The law says we won't talk. That's one reason I put it on my name tag. By law, I can't talk with a voter. Do not interfere or disrupt with the orderly conduct of the election process. Here's one. This is probably the most common. Well, that you will see from voters coming in, but don't use your cell phone to talk or text. Don't take pictures. Actually, keep the ringer off. Hide it in your pocket or something. You can have it on you, but you don't want it to be seen, and you don't want it making a noise. And also, what about these watches? People are, hey, how you doing? You know, they're answering their watch. Be careful with those too. That's the same as, that's an extension. Mine won't do that, but it will. I can read a text on it, so I try to keep it hidden. If you need to use your phone, go outside of that 100 feet. Do not talk to an election worker about the election except to call into account any irregularities or a violation of the law. Don't go up there and say, hey, how's it going? We used to go to school together, didn't we? Don't start a conversation, because you're there to watch and to hear, and you don't want to miss that. Do not touch anything without the PJ's permission. You can look at documents, you can look at reports. In early voting, they're doing reports and so on every day. So I have asked, I'd like to look at these documents. Do you mind if I touch them? Do you mind if I flip? I only had one judge says, no, I'll hold it for you. So, but I got to see what I wanted to see. Oh, never argue with an election worker. That kind of goes back with, it is not our job to make them do stuff. And we can't argue about it. Once you've told the judge, it's done. And if it's illegal, then you can step outside and call Amy. Don't try to, sometimes it's just not worth trying to make the judge do what they should be doing anyhow. Don't wear campaign or questionable attire.
Has anybody made a Pollwatcher shirt, like the Sergeant at Arms shirts that they've made for convention?
You know, we talked about it in November, but we even talked about name tags, but we just didn't do it. But I tell you, a safe one there, wear some stars and stripes. That's about as far as I would go. I believe the law is, it's considered electioneering if you wear a voter, bring in material for somebody or some measure that's on the ballot. So if you wanted to wear a Make America Great cap, okay, President Trump is not on the ballot, but I just wouldn't do that. Just, you're trying to be neutral, right?
Right.
You don't want any reason for somebody to, their antennas go up and it's like, no, this isn't right against you. We don't want any complaints about a poll watcher. You are not allowed to watch how a voter votes unless they've said, hey, election worker, can you help me? And then certainly you can go over and watch what's going on and listen. If you tell how a voter has voted, now there's some teeth in that one, that's a third-degree felony. And if you discuss any of the results, and you will have results on election day after the polls close, the scanner, they're going to print out a report there. You'll have some results there. You'll see them. Do not talk to anybody about them. That's a Class A misdemeanor, which we already found out that's a $4,000 fine and a year in the Hilton at the county jail. Okay, so how do you know if you're being obstructed? That kind of looks like during COVID, doesn't it? All the issues they had. Again, remember, the law is on your side. They cannot obstruct your viewing or your hearing of anything election related. It's an offense.
So if they're signing in a voter and they're doing stuff like covering their hand and blocking what they're writing, would that be obstruction?
And is that the voter?
If they come out to the table and the voter is going to sign in,
Okay.
and the election worker puts their hand right here and writes this stuff down and then just covers the paper, that would be obstruction,
I would
right?
believe that would be obstruction. Yeah, I would do that, but
It was just the first thing I could think of.
yeah, no, but people,
I haven't seen them do that.
people do strange things, and we're going to talk about when voters are checked in,
Right.
because that seems to make some of them uneasy. But if you feel like you're being obstructed in any way with vision or hearing, just say something to the PJ. And if the PJ does not take care of it immediately, then just say, I'm going to step outside. Go outside the 100-foot parameter and call Amy. Okay? And then Amy can work to get that taken care of. Because that's the whole point why you're there, is so that you can see and hear. Okay, so what are we watching? There's 4 things in Tarrant County. We're trying to make this really easy, okay? We felt, there was a small group of us, if we watched these 4 areas, we would feel pretty good if we were responsible, for the fair elections. So, number 1, these things. They're attached to us, right? Can't live without them. Have you ever been on the phone and you were looking for what did I do with my cell phone? We don't even think about it. There's a lot of folks that come in and they aren't thinking about having their cell phone. Some of them, they're on the phone walking in. But 61.014 says you cannot have a wireless communication device within 100 feet of the voting station. And I look at that as meaning the duos inside. 100 feet. You gotta be more than 100 feet. The cell phone, Apple Watches, iPads. I've seen kids, little kids, toddlers come in with their parents, and the babysitter is an iPad. Gotta keep this kid entertained or he'll go crazy. All I said was to the presiding judge, you've got a toddler that's watching a movie, and that's against the law inside the polling location. Hating doing it, but that's the law. The law is the law. And this applies not only to voters, but election workers as well. I worked with a judge twice. She said, oh, it's going to be slow, municipal election. When there's no voters in there, you can watch movies or whatever. Twice that happened. And it ended up in, we have what we call Tarrant County Election Integrity Task Force. And I gave the information to a detective. I was like, I have text messages. I have affidavits from other workers that the judge was allowing this and participated. I didn't. And they were going to take that, but he was like, Tammy, there's not even a fine. There is no teeth in it. Don't be telling people, okay? But it really gets me that they send people, the voters are coming in, they're in the hall waiting to come in, and they got an election worker. Go tell all the people, the voters, to put their phones up, and then they're sitting in there watching a movie. So, election workers can use these only for election-related activities. If it's personal, no. It's just as illegal or unlawful for them.
You can't even watch the Battle of Athens.
Nothing.
Oh,
No.
but that's election-related, isn't it?
But again, and I found they've been really good about this. I just said, okay, PJ, we've got a voter in a duo, and they're using their phone. And they're really good about letting them know. They don't like it when I say, you've got a worker over there using it. They don't like that, but anyhow. This is probably the most common, so that's number one. Number one thing that we're looking for. Oh, also, we had reports of some poll watchers in November after the polls were closed. They were taking pictures of some of the machines and stuff. We're saying no, we disagree with that in our group of poll watchers. Even though there might not be active voting going on, it's an election activity. They're starting to put things up or do reports or whatever. No, don't take any pictures. Don't use your cell within 100 feet, okay? All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to get numbers, dates, times off of these machines. And I mentioned to you I was an accountant. No, we're not going to make you balance everything, but I'm going to leave these note-taking for numbers with you. There's just a few things that we think are important enough, and I don't have them on the slide there, but the first day of early voting, we want to make sure that all of the machines are set at 0, right? And that they all say April 22nd. And when you get in there, they all say 8 a.m. Now, they may be off a minute or two, but I showed up in the afternoon at a polling location on the first day of early voting, and it was about 2 o'clock. And I looked at the controller said 3 o'clock. And I said to the lady running the controller, I was like, did you notice that says 3 o'clock, but it's 2 o'clock? Oh yeah, well why is that? Oh, it's on Eastern time, she said. So, they should all be in agreement. So, if you should find the date is wrong, or something's not zeroed out before things get started, or the time is wrong, let the presiding judge know. In that case, I said something to the presiding judge. She didn't know either. It was news for her. So she called down to Tarrant County, And they said, it's okay, we will have somebody out there before you open in the morning. And they did fix that. So, also, at the beginning on election day, because everything should be zeroed out on election day. Then, that was at the beginning. The ending, the last day, we also, after they closed, we wanted to get numbers off of the e-poll books, you can get them off the controllers if you want. I see that there's a benefit, but we're trying to make it easy for our poll watchers. But getting the numbers off of the scanners and the Duo standalone. So it would be after 7 o'clock in both of those situations, but just making certain that the number of voters that have checked in agree with the number of folks that inserted a ballot in the scanner, plus all provisionals, right? Because every voter should have one ballot, either that they put in the machine or it went into a provisional envelope. Those numbers should be pretty close. I know when it gets hectic, and this happened in Tarrant County, people think the ballot is, oh, I voted on the Duo. That's where my ballot is. I voted, and this piece of paper is my receipt. And they walk out the door without putting it in the scanner. So in those cases, I mean, you should never have more people check in, or I'm sorry, you should never have more people voting on the scanner plus provisionals than checked in. But you can have more people check in than have a ballot that went in the scanner and in the provisional, right? Because somebody might have walked out without doing that. Maybe they missed somebody, right? Okay, also, there's a couple of ending reports, if you could. The last day of early voting and on election day when the polls close, there's a report on the scanner on early voting. It's called the Ballot Count Summary Report. Since you use the Heart, it should be the same report. We use Heart up in Tarrant County. It just says the number of people that inserted a ballot. And you may be asked to sign it anyhow. Some of these reports, a presiding judge will ask you as the poll watcher to sign off on the tape because you saw it generated. You can do that. And just say, hey, can you print out another one? It's just a short little report, little tape. So, also, on election day, it's a different report. This one is a longer one. It has the results. So don't share that, but ask them if you can have your own report. They can print off another one. Okay, so in Tarrant County, we may be we're going to be sending out during various times and places on early voting, especially if we have some issues.
Just for the record,
Yes.
for Whitney, there is only one polling location. It is the same polling location for early voting as well as election day.
Okay.
So if anybody tells you to go to a different polling location, that would be fraudulent.
Well, in Tarrant County, we have countywide voting, where we can go anywhere in the county, and there should be a ballot there, even if we live 50 miles away.
Right.
So, if we see if we're getting reports back that there's some things that just don't seem right at a polling location, or training seems to be lacking, we'll probably keep an eye on it more than some of the others. Okay, so on an e-poll book, where do you get the numbers? I apologize for this picture, it's not too good. On the e-poll book, when people are being checked in, at the top of the screen is where you'll get the numbers. The date, the time, the total check-ins on each e-poll book. I'm guessing you're probably going to have one or two at a location.
Will we be using e-poll book, Gary?
I think so too.
Maybe 2? Okay, all right. At the top, you'll find out how many voters have checked in on each one. They're gonna have different numbers. Now, if you ask a worker to drill down to another report, they'll tell you what the cumulative number is. But we don't need that. If there's 2, you look at one and then you look at the other. And add them together, and you know how many people checked in. Also, it'll have the total registered voters. I'm not sure that we're asking our folks to record that because it was changing all the time. It shouldn't have, but that's a different presentation. On the back side of the e-poll book, at least in Tarrant County, on the back of the case, the black case, they have EPB and then a number, like 45 or 450 or something like that. Even though that's not a serial number, that is the number of that e-poll book. So you'll want to record that. Okay, controller. All of your numbers are down here. The date, the time, the number of codes that have been issued, and then a lifetime number of codes issued. So if you have them record that, that's where the poll watchers will get those. Also, right up here, it's not shown here, that blue lid, up here on the left side, there'll be a plate there, and that's the serial number for that controller. And if there's any reports printed out by that controller, it will show that same serial number. And that serial number starts with the C for controller. Okay, the scanner. Again, down here at the bottom of the screen, date, time, the number of ballots that have been inserted, and then a lifetime count. And also on its lid, there will be another metal plate with that scanner's serial number, and when it prints reports, it says, okay, serial number for this scanner. The serial number will start with an S, scanner S. Now, the Duo standalone, it serves as a controller and a Duo. It will issue the code, and it will allow the person to vote on there and print out their ballot. Again, down here at the bottom of the screen is the date and the time and the number of codes issued and lifetime count. And also in its blue lid, up here on the left-hand side, there's another metal plate, and it starts with I. I don't know why, but that's the serial number that starts with an I. Okay, so number 1 is cell phone use. Number 2 is getting numbers. The third thing to watch for is the checking in of voters, because we want to make sure that there's proper identification, everything's on the up and up. So this is another reason why this qualifying voters on election day is really good to have with you. Okay, so to watch that, the best place is just to stand behind whoever's checking in the voters, right? Okay, here's a secret. Some people you can stand closer to them. They don't mind. Some people are like, you're too close. Can you stand back? Now, they have to understand that you can't stand back on the other side of the room because you can't see.
But arm's distance is reasonable.
But you need to be able to see, and you know, try for a win-win. Some people, they're not trying to be difficult. You don't know about their life. They may not just want people near them. So find a win-win. Like, okay, if you could move over a little bit, then just let me look there quickly, or something like that.
Help
Okay.
me figure this out.
Yeah, let's just figure it out.
Is it okay for them to like just sit down at the table next to them, or do they have to be standing out of the way? Because I know some people, if you're above and hovering, that can be intimidating, but if
Yeah.
you're just sitting there like you're part of the crowd.
Ask them. It's like, you know,
But it's allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, as long as you're not obstructing, right?
Right.
the orderly process. But you need, the law says, you can see and you can hear. I have to be close enough to do both. I have that right. The law protects me, right? Okay. So, but just be aware. Okay. List A. And I believe that you'll probably have a little stand on the table that has what all the list A's are. Yeah.
Do you know if there've been changes in the last year or so? I mean, I at one point I had it down completely, and then there have been changes every couple of years. You can still use an expired ID, I think, to prove your identity.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, so here's the 7 list A items. They all have a photo, okay? And they're government issued, okay? And you're right, okay. If you're between the ages of 18 and 69, you can show them an expired ID as long as it hasn't expired for more than 4 years. But a senior citizen's perk is, it can be expired for 20 years. Hey, you're 75 years old. If you still have your driver's license that you got when you were 16, you can show that. I mean, the picture's not going to probably look the same. But yes, that's kind of crazy, but that's what the law is. So yes. Okay. Now, here's something that I found out because they didn't tell me, but they're scanning the driver's license in, right? They're not scanning in that driver's license. They're scanning in the information to compare it to the e-poll book to come up with a match. That's why sometimes you might get more than one matches show up in the e-poll book. And the fact that you are not connected with the Department of Public Safety, right? You're connected with voter registration in your county. So make sure that when you're standing there and you see more than one person show up, just watch very carefully that the clerk selects the right one. And they might with an address or date of birth or something like that. Because we've had that in Tarrant County. Again, a lot more voters. But I'm aware of a situation where they showed up, but sir, you've already voted. No, I didn't. But they found out that a clerk checked them in somewhere else. They selected the wrong person to vote. Yeah.
That happened to my son and my ex in Red Oak. They were not using a computer, but just reading across the line,
Yeah.
she marked the wrong head key as having voted. And thankfully, small town, easy enough to figure
Yes.
out and get changed, but it happens.
Yes, yes. So it'll give you a close but not exact. I just want you to be aware, and I wish that they would focus on this in the election worker training.
I'd be in favor of having a suggestion for the person checking them in to explain to them that if they have moved, they can probably still vote. I think that 15% of the people who are voting at their old address, and they're afraid when they're asked, do you still live at this address? They panic, and they would lie to their mother at that point because they're convinced that they'll be led away to the execution chamber if they admit that they were, that they didn't update their records. And as I always say, as someone who looks at voter lists a lot, people will go door to door and they'll say, this list is crap, it's terrible. I'll say, well, it's legally perfect. Because if that person shows up and says they live there, they can vote.
Yeah.
But just think about it. When you move, you say, okay, well, I told my girlfriend and I told my church that I've moved. Nobody ever says, and now I have to tell the registrar of voters about my new address. No,
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. Well, in Tarrant County, we have people moving around a lot.
Yeah.
It's
6-month leases. And
Yeah.
They move two times a year.
Yeah. So the ID is to verify, they should be looking. This person here on this ID is the person standing in front of me. Yeah. We've got some clerks that aren't really looking.
If it says they're 69 years old and you see a 20-year-old person standing there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, they can ask if the address is correct on the voter registration, on the e-poll book. Not necessarily the license, because again, that's just for the ID. And they have these statement of residence forms. Are they yellow here? A yellow form?
I haven't had to fill one out.
Okay.
I just think that they should say, if you've moved, it's okay. You just
Yeah, yeah.
need to update it,
Right. You can still vote. You can vote.
unless they moved into or out of the county.
Right. That's a different, but you know, within Hill County, yeah, or in Tarrant County, yes. But also, if it says they're in suspense, that means that the county has mailed them something and it came back undeliverable. As I understand, twice it has to come back undeliverable. And then they put them in suspense. They cannot, by law, they cannot vote until they fill out a statement of residence. Now, don't tell anybody, but the machines don't know. The machines will let them vote. But they're supposed to fill that out, and they need to fill it out. I saw this where they were letting them vote, and then, when you're done voting, fill out this statement of residence. No, you got it backwards. They should fill it out before you give them the code to go to the controller, right? You need to get that filled out. And I did have, when I was the judge several cycles ago, somebody said, but this is the address that I live at. I know it's crazy, but please fill it out even though it's the same address, and then you can vote.
Yeah, even if it's a mistake in the records, fill
Yeah.
this out and that will correct the records.
Yeah.
So everything's set.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Limited term. It says limited term on their driver's license. They are not a U.S. citizen.
I
They
didn't know
should
that.
not be
Limited term.
voting.
Limited term.
So, if that happens, what do? Okay, here's one of those situations. We would be more likely in Tarrant County to have something like that rather than you folks. But this could be if you're here and they're handing them a limited term driver's license. Okay, hang on a second. Don't go any farther. Go get the presiding judge. Because an election worker is not to let an illegal or a non-citizen vote. Around November, the Secretary of State was trying to get us that was a crime if we let people vote. Okay? So I'm not going to do anything that's unlawful, but if this happens, get the presiding judge over there.
There was a Washington Post article printed about 10 years ago. It's pretty old. And it said that this university had studied this and that they had estimated that there were 5 figures, 10,000 or more voters who voted illegally, who were given a voter registration because they got a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the point in the article that a lot of these people didn't realize they were breaking the law. They were given a voter registration card and they went and voted. But the article also said that was enough people that it would have changed the outcome of many elections. And man, that article disappeared overnight. Because now, you know, the party line is if you even question it. And, you know, I don't understand that.
You know, I know
understand
this. As an election worker, we're not supposed to question, but sometimes, like on something like this, yeah, we need to question. I had a fella show up in November, he and his wife, and I guess everything was fine. Since I was the judge there, I got all the questionable ones. Well, he didn't show up in the e-poll book. So any of those that didn't show up in the e-poll book, I took them aside. We went into the sanctuary. We were at a church. So to get some privacy, I took the license and I would call down to Tarrant County Elections and I put it on speakerphone because I wanted the voter to hear what was being said. And so while we're on hold, I got to talking to him, and he admitted to me, well, I haven't registered to vote. I'm not a citizen, but I'm hoping to be one soon. I mean, he was starting to tell the truth.
He didn't have a lawyer there.
Well, he didn't have a lawyer. But I looked at his Texas driver's license. It didn't say limited term on it. So, if that happens, document all the details. You can write down the information. Now, don't touch their license, but tell presiding judge, I want to take that all down and put that in your notes. That's pretty important, especially if you have a number of them in a row that got off a bus or something like that.
Well, and what's really frustrating is when people will write in the newspaper or in an article, there is no voter fraud. There's no evidence of voter fraud. And then when you run across a case like this, they say, no, you can't write that down. That's really discriminatory to write that down. Well, you're telling me there's no evidence, and then when there is a little bit of evidence, you're telling me I can't record it. So that's not fair. It's just not right.
Well, I wondered later, his wife didn't seem to have an issue. I just wondered if maybe she was illegal and somehow ended up in the e-poll book. He got set aside because he wasn't in the e-poll book. And then since he was confessing to me, he pulled out and showed me his Mexico permanent citizenship. So he was just, man, maybe I should be in, a detective or something like that and get people to tell me what's going on. But if this happens, call your POC, your point of contact, and that's probably going to be Amy. And something like this might require an affidavit. It's pretty important. Now, the presiding judge may want to let them vote using a provisional. That is a safer alternative. Okay, so then you have this list B. Don't like these list Bs, but the law says, the Texas law, if you don't have an A, but you have a B, you can still vote.
And the current law means if you don't possess one of these, not if you forgot it at home, if
Right.
you do not own a driver's
That's what I
license,
go with. If you don't own an A lister ID, then we can go to B. Let's see what is B. And with a B, I don't like this, but you can vote reasonable impediment declaration. Okay, a B, a government document that shows the voter's name and address. A current utility bill, because it's gonna have your name and address. And current meaning 2 months. No, not older than 2 months. Bank statement with name and address. A government check, name and address. A paycheck. Or a certified domestic birth certificate or any other document confirming birth that's admissible in a court of law. I don't know what that would be, but it wouldn't include a social security card because there's no address. College IDs, there's no address. A library card, no address. Get this. So the address on the A's and B's don't even have to agree what's in the e-poll book. And the names don't have to match exactly. Isn't this crazy? But if the names don't match exactly, then they may require the voter to fill out a similar name correction request form.
All these articles, AP was printing articles, the new voter law, and it wasn't in Texas, will make it impossible for newly married women to vote. It never makes it impossible. It might be a hassle.
Yeah. Okay, so a reasonable impediment. The voter fills it out and have to indicate why they don't have an A. And they can't be questioned about that. And well, actually, I would think that the one most often when you've applied for it, you just haven't got it. You know, people renew their driver's license.
Which is pretty legit.
Or they
these
lost
days.
it.
With DPS, sometimes
Yeah.
it takes a long time.
Somebody stole my purse one time. I didn't have a driver's license for a bit.
It's a boating accident. That's
Oh, around here, yeah, that's at the bottom of Lake Whitney. So, the PJ puts their voter ID on it, they look at what document they're providing, you can also look at it too. Examine it. This is what I don't like, they get to vote regular ballot.
So there's a way to take it out later.
And it's my understanding that there wasn't a lot of reasonable impediments in November. I haven't looked myself, but I looked at a much smaller municipal election, and there was a lot of reasonable impediments, and I think there was a reason. But I've got that mind that I don't believe some things, I don't trust. Okay, then they can vote provisionally. If they don't have an A, but they own one, it's wherever, they can vote provisionally, which means they have to indicate there on the e-poll book, they're voting provisionally, and as I understand, I think it's on the controller too, they're voting provisionally. So that way, if they try to take their ballot after it's printed out of the duo, they put it in the scanner, and the scanner will reject it. It needs to go in the provisional envelope. And then you have a ballot board that examines those and determine whether they're gonna count them or not.
He has a funny story about that.
What's your funny story?
Oh, my daughter was late getting everything taken care of, and so we finally got, had to reorder her birth certificate, and she went in and she was supposed to vote provisionally, and she turned around, and she was, deer in the headlights look, and whoever the election clerk was just said, "Hey, honey, come on over here, just put that right in the ballot box," and that's what they did, and she's like, and then the election clerk's like, "No!" So yeah, she got a little sticker that said "My vote counted," even though she was supposed to vote provisionally.
That is funny, kinda.
Right.
But I mean, they've got a lot of things going on, but
Yeah,
still,
yeah.
They just put it into a box rather than
I think so.
yeah, because the scanner would have rejected it if
Yeah,
it
this
would have
was
said
Ellis
provisional.
County. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This was a while back. Yeah,
Yeah,
3 years.
3 years ago.
okay, all right, so, number one is wireless communication use that we look for. Number two is we're getting numbers and dates and times and all that. Number three, we're watching check-ins. And number four, curbside voting. You don't have to be handicapped to use curbside. I mean, I think the legislature designed it if you were handicapped and you couldn't come in. But you know what? I've seen people walkers and canes and could barely move. It's like, I'm going inside that polling location and I'm gonna cast my ballot. Those are the diehards.
Yes.
But I also had somebody say, well, if you've got 5 little kids, I don't want them running around here, just pull up to the curbside voting.
I have told people that it is better that you exercise your right to vote, even if you have to vote curbside to do
Yeah.
it. So at least you're doing it in person.
Yeah, so, I'm gonna tell you a secret, I understand why we have them, but that's an area that, there's a reason it's number 4 on here. We need to watch every one of them. Watch every curbside. If you show up at your polling location and you don't see the standalone, it's not inside and it's not being used, you need to alert the presiding judge immediately. Where is your standalone? Because that little thing can vote, can generate a ballot, and end up in the scanner without a person, a real voter, standing in front of it. That's all I'm gonna say on that, but it is an area that could be used if you had collision, or if you had a judge that wanted things to go a certain way, they could vote for people that never even showed up. So we always watch this. 2 election officials go out, and the reason they do that is so that one can watch the other, that can verify, that extra set of eyes, like videotaping this, you have evidence, okay? That everything was on the up and up. You can listen to the instructions and you can observe what's going on, but you can't watch how the voter votes unless they're asking for assistance from one of those 2 election officials. That ballot is printed by the duo standalone. They put it into a large envelope. It says secrecy ballot, I think, on the outside. And then they take everything back into the polling location and they pull it out, and they both should still be standing there and make sure that the ballot went in the scanner. Okay. All right, so you've looked at everything that you wanted to, you got your numbers. How do you get out? Well, you go find that presiding judge and say, thank you, Judge, I appreciate your time, your courtesies to me. I'm done with my service today. You can go ahead and take off your Pollwatcher label and throw it in the trash or give it back to them. Take your notes with you. That's your property. The presiding judge doesn't have any right to look at it at all. It's like, well, what did you write? Can I see that? No, do not show anybody. If you have any questions or concerns or whatever that are pretty serious, before you leave that location, call Amy and express those to her. In Tarrant County, we are asking that if you have a big concern, well, if it's really big, you're going to go out and you're going to call the hotline. But if it's somewhat of a concern, scan your notes and send it to, we've got a couple of people that are taking these. And if it's just, typical stuff, scan it and send within a week. Because we keep track of those. All right, so poll watching, early voting, closing of the polls. If you're there, watch the sealing and securing of the equipment. Now, do you have, document seal numbers, counter numbers, all of that? And then, are the county employees coming and picking it up and taking it down to Hill County elections? What's your
Unsure.
process for that?
Unsure.
The judge president.
The election
And
judge.
is that for early voting? Now, I know election day, or,
No, I'm sorry, I was only talking about election day.
Okay.
Early voting just stays there in the public list.
well, you've got
Until
the
end.
ballots and you've got, because that's like a whole new election. In Tarrant County, here's what happens. At the end of early voting, the county has got runners. They show up after the polling locations close, and they get the required equipment and reports, and then the poll watchers can follow the county back to the election headquarters. We can follow them. And I've even had one of the gentlemen that works for the county, hey Tammy, do you want us to take 35 or take another run? It was really nice. And I was like, oh, 35's fine, And they can't bench you, or they're not supposed to. But follow them until the equipment and the ballots bags are situated. You have the law says you can do that. You can follow that. Now, on election day, closing, you can follow the judge as they take the equipment. And in Tarrant County, we have so many locations. You kind of gasped when you heard that there was 160 this election. We have 360 on election day in November. A bunch. So each one of these judges, they're supposed to tell the county, hey, I'm going to show up to one of these 6 rally stations, which are closer to their polling location than going all the way to the county's headquarters. So you can follow the judge there. We're saying, look and make sure that that ballot bag is sealed. Well, you probably saw that it was sealed when, if you were watching the equipment secured. Make sure everything is secured properly. But I'll tell you, I've seen bags when I was poll watching at Central Count, bags where they sealed the handle and the zipper's like, hey, geez, we could just open it all up. Crazy. And that passed a rally site. The rally sites are staffed with election workers. Well, excuse me, election employees and some contract labor. They should have known that bag should have never got all the way up to Tarrant County headquarters. Also, I like to have them watch on the scanners. They're gonna break that one seal, the little seal, because there's 2 thumb drives in there. That's the results. That's what they use for the results, not the ballots. It's those thumb drives. Watch and make sure when they take them out that one goes into one bag and another in another bag, and it's documented. And make sure that those got put in the bag and they didn't do a quick slipperoo, right? Because that's how it can be done. So in Tarrant County, we're asking our poll watchers to commit to a schedule. And we're all busy, but this is important. We need eyes, right? So we've got 45 early voting locations. You've got one. So you surely can get coverage for that. And then,
Given fruits?
yeah. So I think we're pretty good. We've got some folks, they feel more confident now. I know that first time when you walk in to a polling location as a watcher, I remember when I did it, I was very nervous.
This is such a good program because most people you can say, calm down.
Yeah.
The job description is to watch. This is like
Right.
going to a football game.
Right.
You get to watch, you get to remember if anything looked weird. and
Yeah.
Then you get to go home. No one's gonna tackle you.
Right.
No one's gonna break your arm. This is easy.
In Tarrant County, we're also offering a buddy system. Because if somebody is, I don't know, I've done this where I've met them, I was like, okay, where would you like to go? I'll meet you there. And I'd go in with them. I would go first. And I would check in with the presiding judge and I'd say, hey, I've got a poll watcher out here. They're coming in the next couple of minutes. And I'm just showing them the ropes. So the presiding judge is aware. But because we're both appointed by the same, it's okay, there's only 2 of us, right? And I spend about an hour very quietly walking around and letting them know what I look at and why. And then I leave and then they're good. It's that first few steps into the polling location, right? You have something, Amy?
Okay, someone is asking me just to verify if we had 4 people that wanted to do poll watching, they could go in and just do a 2-hour segment, 2-hour segment, a 2-hour segment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They can, and then we've been really lenient. We're asking them where, we give them a list of the locations. Where would you like to poll watch? When would you like to poll watch? But especially on that first day, we want every location watched on early voting. We don't have 160 to do it on election day.
Right.
But we know some people. We know some of the locations that have a better reputation than others. We try to go where there might be some issues on election day. But yeah, just as long as there's no more than 2 appointed or there at the same time appointed by the same candidate.
Gotcha.
You can go in for 5 minutes. You can go in for all day. We did have one poll watcher, early voting and election day. He was there all day, every day. He just felt that was important enough for him.
So if Gary had an hour on the first day of early voting, I could appoint both Gary and Mr. McKinley over here.
Yes.
And that way they could go in together and
Yes.
Gary could kind of be there to help answer his. Now, if you have 2 poll watchers, they can't talk to each other.
They're not supposed to, but
But they could
I
go
will let
outside.
the judge know, hey, I'm Yeah, and if they say, okay, you know you can't talk to each other, what I would do is, kind of point, and then go outside the 100, just go outside, and then tell you things that, hey, did you notice this or that? I've gone to a couple of them with somebody, a buddy, and the judge was wonderful. Hey, let's just do a little, a tour here.
Yeah.
And went from the e-poll book all the way to the scanner.
Wow.
And just, they did the training for me. It was wonderful.
That's what they should do. That's what they
Yeah,
should do.
they didn't have anything to
Should
hide.
know that They need to train the people for 3 elections from now. There need to be more people who know how to do
Yes.
it.
And what I found for some of the poll watchers that we trained, all they knew was, in November, I have to do something. I have to do something. And poll watching is where they wanted to go. They showed up. They had never been into a polling location except to vote.
Right.
So we gave them the practical tips. They went out, and you know what you do when you stand here and you watch and you listen and you keep this shut? You learn. And now I've had several of them say, hey, I want to work. I want to get paid, but I want to be able to interact with people. That was so hard to not say anything. So poll watching, you're right. It can help the next.
And I know that your role and what I've done, a lot of people get involved because they're very suspicious. And I respect that, and I understand that that's why we're there, because we're worried. But I also think, and this isn't controversial to say, I believe that if you have 200 or 300 people who go and work as poll watchers, at the end of the day, they will say, well, there's a lot more security than I thought. They had little locking things, and they had keys,
Exactly.
and the person who had the keys, they say, well, I want to be a poll watcher because I want to catch them cheating. No, you don't really want to be a poll watcher. You want to be a poll watcher until you know how to be a judge. Because when you're the judge, you're the person who carries the keys in your pocket. So if we want security, we want everybody to learn how to run the election and to know exactly which button to push and all of that. So I don't mean to sound like I don't
No,
think
not
there's
at
any-
all, but you're absolutely right.
Just gives them
Where-
a better feeling at the end of the day.
Yes, and I've been out enough. I feel better at some of these locations because I saw that they were doing things right. And then I also was at some locations that, well, I had to say something to the presiding judge. But you know what? It was a training thing. I feel better overall.
And it may be because we were there, so
Right.
maybe that's the only reason
Well,
it went well.
and I
But
think
at least it went well.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So in Tarrant County, that's our hotline, but Amy, you put your number out there, or who they should call, or
And-
election administrator, or
And
whatever.
just for the live stream, I mean, I'm hosting this, I'm sponsoring this, but every single candidate has the right to appoint their own poll watchers.
Yes.
They don't have to go through me. But if anybody wants to be a poll watcher in the city of Whitney and they are a city of Whitney resident, I am happy to appoint them as long as they've done the training.
In every other county. Every
Yeah.
candidate in every county.
If you're in other counties, you're kind of on your own, but call us if you need any help.
Yeah. Well, that's what you did, hey, you called.
Yeah, I
us,
called Tarrant.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the state doing any kind of centralized hotlines? Well, maybe not
There's
for
different organizations, and
non-partisan.
like there's 10 Texas Election Network. I don't know what they were, I interacted with them in November. They were a good resource. I don't know what they're doing now.
RPT did do it in 22.
Okay.
But that was for a partisan election.
And that was for partisan election, that was for the primary for practice, and then again in general, and maybe not these, but I think they didn't do it in 24. It's just a matter of whoever's in charge and whether they have the money to hire a couple of people to coordinate. But we had a statewide hotline, and it's actually set up in Bear County, so I was in
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
and that's nice because then you
Yeah.
got access to Donna Davidson, who's.
You have used her. Several calls to Donna in November. Yeah, she's great. She's a great resource. So we also, Amy, whenever we would start to see something, something show up at several of them, we would send out an email, hey, poll watchers, watch for this. We've noticed it at a couple of locations. So keep them plugged in. You don't need well, you could probably use a schedule. We're using Google spreadsheets.
We do a lot with Google Sheets.
Schedule, and we let our poll watchers have access. They can't change anything, but they can see
Right.
what the schedule is. So, okay. Any questions?
Hang on, I gotta zoom in on that.
Oh. It says, oh, him? He's a poll watcher. Yeah, I'll watch over this.
That's a great cartoon. I've never seen it before.
Well, I appreciate you inviting Tarrant County
Yeah.
down here. Just, we're all in the same boat. Just share information,
Right.
things that have worked for us.
Well, and that's one of the things that I try to keep in mind. I haven't lived in a town this tiny before. I'm used to, Waxahachie or Ellis County or helping out in Bear County or Tarrant County.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that are just universal, and what to watch for and that the process is happening with or without you. Our poll watchers down here will probably get a little bit more of a treat because it's going to be pretty simple and easy, but they're still going to see the whole process being done, and they'll get to see it in kind of a slower, more controlled, deliberate manner, and not a hustle bustle of trying to get everybody in and out. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Well, and it was 2010 when I was in Afghanistan, and that will make you appreciate this process because this is what makes us different. Everybody wants to be able to run a free and fair election, but it's people like you that make them happen, and we're very, very lucky to have all the people who volunteer, and I say volunteer even if they're getting paid, whatever it is, $11 an hour this year? They don't get paid.
Oh, for the workers, they don't get paid much.
Yeah.
It's more than a poll watcher, which is zero.
Nobody's in it for the money to be
Right.
to be in the elections, and
Right.
so it's a great thing. It's what keeps our country moving forward because without that, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You can't just have a national secretary of state who wants to have an election and just makes it happen. All these little things, like what do you do when someone comes in with a utility bill? Well, there's an answer in America because people have been in the training and there's a way to handle it. And so, thank you so much for coming down here.
I do have, if you want to be a memorable poll watcher, I was talking with a former election judge. Well, so-and-so was the best poll watcher I ever had. Because they brought donuts every morning.
Just real quick, since we got the computer up, would you be able to pull up the Secretary of State's training link so we get it on the video?
Can I connect to the internet here?
Yes, ma'am. The library has a guest Wi-Fi.
How long did it take you to do the training? 30 minutes or less?
No, it took me a little bit longer.
Oh, did okay.
Yeah, so I don't read so fast.
Oh, okay.
So it probably took me hour, almost two, because I made sure I understood. And then when I did the quizzes, I did pass each one 100%. So
There
I was
you go.
trying to watch the detail.
That's great. That's great news for anybody who's thinking about doing this. They might say,
What's your
well,
password?
I made
Yes.
C's in high school.
Capital
And to
G,
have testimony
then
from someone,
lowercase
you're not saying, oh
capital
yeah, I'm a senior
LIE,
partner at a law firm,
and
or I'm
the
an
number
accountant
2.
or whatever. You're an average reader, and you made it through just fine.
Yeah. Now some of the stuff was easier to read only because it was
LIV, all caps?
not
Yes.
so much
Okay.
detail. So And being that they say, oh, there's a quiz, well, how much detail do I need to read?
Oh, yes,
So capital G,
But I
lowercase
think you
u
can
e s t,
retake
and
a
then
quiz.
capital
if-
L,
if
capital
you
I,
need to,
capital
but
B, and number 2.
it should work now.
At least that's what it says on this podium.
And when I have a thing that I switch things around, so I have to think. When I was real young, I wasn't, I was okay, but I wasn't doing real well in school.
Seriously?
Maybe a C
Oh,
or
oh,
something.
Lake Whitney
So they
Library
would
guest,
have me
one
check
W
my
below it, I think.
eyes, and they says,
Oh.
you put the word U up there,
There
it
you go.
says, tell me those letters. And I says,
Okay.
Y-U-O.
Well, you-
And then he scolded me for being a smart aleck and being a brat, you know,
Oh,
yeah. But that's in the early years when they didn't understand that.
yeah, no, my brother is a retired firefighter, and he's been a great
Yeah,
success in
connected.
life.
Woohoo!
He's just been a very happy and successful guy. But I was not dyslexic. He was, and teachers would say, why don't you work hard like your brother?
Yeah.
And you wish you could go back to those teachers and just box their ears and say,
Yeah,
you don't know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up this live stream, we're just going to go straight to the Secretary of State's site so that anybody who is now kind of interested in doing this can see exactly where we're going.
Okay, it's training and educational resources.
Gotcha.
And then
This
poll
kid-
watchers,
Yeah.
poll watchers here.
Different from
Yeah,
poll
not-
workers. It's easy.
Yes.
Yes,
watch
we
that.
are not doing poll worker. You got to go.
That's next year.
And then you'll see this Texas election training portal, and you'll need to create a free account with your email address and a password, and then once you get in there, then you can see choices for courses, and again, make sure that it's the poll watcher, because there is a poll worker, and also you can have training on the hard equipment too.
Oh, okay.
So if a poll watcher wanted more information, again, it's free. You can learn all about the hard equipment.
Cool.
That was in Tarrant. I don't think anybody's ever offered me any access to the hard equipment.
Well, it's on the Secretary of State, yeah.
That's great.
They
I need
do
to
have
look
it.
into that.
Nice. Okay.
Need to look into that.
Well,
And-
that's all I got.
And for everybody watching, they can go do the training for the poll watcher stuff. And I was telling Richard, is like, if you go in for 5 minutes and say, I am not going to stay here and do this all day, that's okay.
Uh-huh.
You know, because at least you're getting the training, you're getting to see the process in action, and there's not a huge commitment. You know, we're not going to dock your pay, but so cool.
I'm sure you would be grateful for any amount of time.
Any
anybody
amount of
could
time,
do.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
And we are too.
So.
Win-win-win.
And in Whitney, all the voting is at the Whitney ISD admin building in the boardroom. And if anybody's interested in knowing where the boardroom is, there's a Whitney ISD school board meeting this Thursday at 7:30 in the morning. So just FYI. But okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and we'll talk to you guys later. Happy voting. Oh, early voting starts Tuesday, April 22nd and goes through April 29th. In Whitney, there is no weekend voting. It is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Through the 28th, and on the 29th, we have 7 to 7. So, ta-da, there you go. All right, bye, guys.